The rain had finally stopped when Kaya found the small brown puppy near the dumpster behind her apartment building. Its fur was wet and dirty, and it looked like it hadn't eaten in days. Kaya had just finished her night shift at the local diner and was taking out the trash when she heard soft crying sounds coming from behind the large metal container. At first, she thought it might be a cat, but when she moved closer with her phone's flashlight, she saw the tiny puppy curled up in a ball, trying to stay warm. Its eyes were barely open, and Kaya could see its ribs through its thin fur. Without thinking twice, she took off her jacket and wrapped the shivering puppy in it. "Hey there, little one," she said softly, picking it up. The puppy didn't fight or try to run away. Instead, it seemed to sink deeper into the warmth of her jacket. Kaya knew she couldn't leave it out here, not in this weather, not when it was so young and helpless. Her apartment didn't allow pets, and her landlord MX, Thorn, was strict about rules. But Kaya couldn't think about that right now. She quietly carried the puppy up the back stairs, careful not to make any noise that might wake her neighbors. Once inside her small one-bedroom apartment, she turned on the lights and got a better look at her new friend. The puppy was smaller than she thought, probably only a few weeks old. Its brown fur was matted with mud and who knows what else, and one of its ears flopped down while the other stood straight up. Despite being dirty and scared, there was something special about its face, a kind of sweetness that made Kaya smile. "First things first," she said, filling her sink with warm water. "You need a bath and then some food." The puppy didn't resist as she gently washed it, revealing soft golden brown fur underneath all the dirt. It was a girl, Kaya discovered, and as she dried her off with a clean towel, she tried to think of a name. "I think I'll call you Luna," she said, remembering how she'd found her under the moonlight. But when she said it out loud, it didn't feel right. The puppy looked up at her with big brown eyes, and suddenly Kaya knew. "No, you're more of a sage." "Yeah, that's it. Sage." Kaya didn't have any pet food, so she warmed up some leftover chicken from her dinner and cut it into tiny pieces. Sage ate slowly at first, then faster as she realized how hungry she was. After eating, the puppy curled up on Kaya's lap and fell asleep almost immediately. Looking down at the sleeping puppy, Kaya knew she was in trouble. Her apartment building's no-pet rule was clear, and her job at the diner barely paid enough for her own food and rent. But as Sage snuggled closer in her sleep, Kaya made up her mind. She would figure something out. She had to. The next morning, Kaya called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. She needed to get supplies for Sage and take her to a vet. Her savings weren't much, but this was important. She found an old cardboard box and made it comfortable with some blankets, placing it in her bedroom closet. "This is your safe spot," she told Sage, who was exploring the apartment on wobbly legs. "If anyone comes to the door, you need to stay quiet in here." At the pet store, Kaya bought the basics: puppy food, a small collar, some toys, and training pads. The cashier, an older woman named Rook, noticed how carefully Kaya was choosing each item. "First-time pet owner?" she asked with a kind smile. "Is it that obvious?" Kaya laughed nervously. "We all start somewhere," Rook said, and then added in a lower voice, "Listen, I know a vet who does checkups for rescue animals at a discount. Her name is Dr. Wren. Here's her number." She scribbled it on the back of the receipt. The vet visit later that day brought both good and bad news. Sage was about 6 weeks old and, despite being undernourished, was basically healthy. But Dr. Wren thought she might grow to be much bigger than Kaya expected. Based on her paw size and features, she's likely a mix of German Shepherd and maybe Great Dane, Dr. Wren explained. She could easily reach 80 pounds or more when fully grown. Kaya's heart sank. There was no way she could hide a dog that size in her small apartment. But looking at Sage, who was now happily chewing on Dr. Wren's stethoscope, Kaya couldn't imagine giving her up. The next few weeks became a careful dance of hiding Sage from the landlord and neighbors. Kaya walked her very early in the morning and late at night, carrying her down the back stairs in a large tote bag. She bought a baby gate to keep Sage in the bathroom while she was at work, leaving the radio on low to mask any puppy noises. But Sage was growing fast, too fast. By the end of the first month, she had doubled in size, and her bark was getting harder to disguise as just TV noise. Kaya started taking extra shifts at the diner, saving every tip she could. She needed to find a pet-friendly apartment before Sage got too big to hide. One rainy evening, just as Kaya was returning from walking Sage, she ran into MX, Thorn, in the hallway. Sage, who was hidden in the tote bag, chose that exact moment to sneeze. "What was that, MX?" Thorn asked, eyes narrowing. "Oh, just me," Kaya said quickly, fake sneezing again. "Getting over a cold." MX, Thorn didn't look convinced but didn't say anything else. Kaya hurried to her apartment, heart racing. She knew time was running out. That night, as she lay in bed with Sage curled up next to her, Kaya scrolled through apartment listings on her phone. Everything pet-friendly was way out of her price range. "What are we going to do, Sage?" she whispered. The puppy responded by licking her face and wagging her tail, completely unaware of their predicament. Despite her worry, Kaya had to smile. In just a few weeks, this dog had become her whole world. She wouldn't give up, she couldn't. There had to be a way to make this work. Tomorrow was another day and maybe, just maybe, they'd find a solution. For now, though, Kaya pulled Sage closer and closed her eyes, letting the sound of puppy snores lull her to sleep. Whatever happened, they would face it together. The next morning, Kaya woke up to find Sage sitting by the door, tail wagging. The puppy was now the size of a small adult dog, and her feet looked even bigger than before. Kaya knew she couldn't keep using the tote bag to sneak her out. Sage barely fit in it anymore. Just as they were getting ready for their morning walk, Kaya's phone rang. It was the diner. One of the morning shift workers was sick, and they needed her to come in early. Kaya looked at Sage, who was holding her leash in her mouth, ready for their walk. "I'm sorry, girl," she said, taking the leash. "We'll have to make this a quick one." They hurried down the back stairs, but this time Sage was too excited and pulled hard on the leash. Kaya lost her balance, and they both tumbled down the last few steps. The noise brought several neighbors out of their apartments, including MX, Thorn. Kaya sat on the ground, holding her scraped elbow, while Sage stood next to her, tail between her legs. There was no hiding now. "A dog." "MX," Thorn said, walking closer. "How long have you been keeping a dog in your apartment?" Before Kaya could answer, an older man stepped forward from the small crowd. It was Mr. Pike from apartment 3B, who always sat on the front steps feeding pigeons. "That's my dog," he said firmly. "I asked Kaya to walk her sometimes because of my bad hip." He looked at Kaya and winked. "Isn't that right?" Kaya nodded quickly, still surprised by the unexpected help. But MX, Thorn wasn't fooled. "Nice try," they said, crossing their arms. "I've never seen this dog before, and I know every pet in this building. You have until the end of the week to either get rid of the dog or move out." Kaya went to work that day feeling defeated. During her break, she sat in the back alley of the diner, crying into her apron. That's where Rook, the pet store cashier, found her. Rook sometimes came to the diner for coffee, and today she noticed something was wrong. After Kaya told her everything, Rook was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know, my sister Fern owns a small house outside the city. She's been looking for someone to rent her basement apartment. It's not fancy, but it has a fenced yard." "Really?" Kaya sat up straighter. "But I don't make much money. Most of my savings went to Sage's vet bills and supplies." "Talk to her," Rook insisted, writing down an address. "Fern likes helping people more than she likes money." That evening, after picking up Sage from her apartment, Kaya drove her old car to the address Rook gave her. The house was small but neat, with a garden full of vegetables and flowers. Fern turned out to be a tall woman with gray hair and paint-stained clothes. "So this is the famous Sage," Fern said, kneeling down to pet the puppy. Sage immediately rolled over for belly rubs, making Fern laugh. "She's got good manners for a puppy." The basement apartment was bigger than Kaya expected, with its own entrance and a small kitchen. Best of all, it opened directly into the backyard. Fern showed them around, explaining that she used to rent it to art students before she retired from teaching. "The last tenant left suddenly, and honestly, I've been a bit lonely," Fern admitted. "Having someone here, especially someone with a dog, would be nice. The rent's negotiable, and you can help me with the garden if you want to make up the difference." Kaya could hardly believe it. The rent Fern asked for was less than her current apartment, and she wouldn't have to hide Sage anymore. There was even a dog door already installed. "Can we really stay here?" Kaya asked, watching Sage explore the apartment. "On one condition," Fern said seriously. Then she smiled. "You have to promise to join me for dinner sometimes. I always cook too much for one person." That weekend, Kaya's co-workers from the diner helped her move. She didn't have much furniture, but everything seemed to fit perfectly in the new space. Sage ran back and forth between the apartment and the yard, clearly excited about having room to play. As weeks passed, Kaya and Sage settled into their new life. Sage grew bigger, just as Dr. Wren predicted, but now her size wasn't a problem. She had space to run, and the basement apartment was sturdy enough to handle her enthusiastic tail wagging. Fern turned out to be more than just a landlord. She taught Kaya about gardening, and soon they had a small vegetable patch of their own. Sage appointed herself guardian of the garden, chasing away rabbits and squirrels. One day, while they were all working in the garden, Rook came to visit. She watched Sage helping Kaya dig holes for new tomato plants, though Sage's help mostly involved making the holes bigger than necessary. "You know," Rook said, "the pet store where I work needs someone to help with dog training classes. The pay's better than the diner, and you could bring Sage with you." Kaya looked at Sage, who was now carrying a watering can around the garden, proud of herself even though most of the water was spilling out. "I don't know anything about dog training," she admitted. "You raised a dumpster puppy into this sweet girl," Rook pointed out. "That takes skill. Besides, we'll train you first." That evening, as Kaya sat on her small patio with Sage's head in her lap, she thought about how much had changed. 2 months ago, she was sneaking a tiny puppy up the back stairs of her apartment. Now she had a home, a garden, and maybe soon, a new job. Sage looked up at her with those same sweet eyes that had first caught Kaya's heart behind the dumpster. She was no longer the tiny, scared puppy. She was now a big, gentle dog who loved everyone she met. But she still followed Kaya everywhere, still curled up next to her bed every night, still greeted her every morning with a wagging tail. "We did it, girl," Kaya whispered, scratching behind Sage's ears. But their story wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. Starting her new job at the pet store was both exciting and scary for Kaya. Rook showed her everything: how to handle different types of dogs, basic training commands, and even how to talk to pet owners. Sage came with her every day, becoming the store's unofficial mascot. At first, Sage would get too excited during training classes, wanting to play with all the other dogs. But slowly she learned to stay calm and watch from her special spot near Kaya's desk. Sometimes, when they were working with scared or nervous dogs, Sage would help by showing them what to do. One morning, while Kaya was setting up for a puppy training class, a young girl walked in with her parents. The girl was using a wheelchair, and she looked nervous. Her parents explained that they were looking for a service dog, but professional training was too expensive. Kaya watched as Sage walked over to the girl, gently placing her head on the girl's lap. The girl smiled for the first time since entering the store, reaching out to pet Sage's soft ears. "How did you train her to be so gentle?" the girl's mother asked, watching Sage. "She just knows," Kaya said. "She can tell when someone needs extra kindness." That gave Kaya an idea. That evening, she talked to Rook about starting a special program at the store. They could help match rescue dogs with people who needed them and offer training at a lower cost. Rook loved the idea and took it to the store owner. Weeks later, they launched their first Paws and People program. Kaya worked with local shelters to find dogs with the right temperament, while Rook handled the business side. Sage helped test each dog, showing them how to behave around different people. Their first success was placing a gentle older dog named Bear with Mr. Pike, the man who had tried to help Kaya back at her old apartment. His hip was getting worse, and he needed a calm companion. Bear turned out to be perfect for him. Word spread about their program. Soon, they were helping all kinds of people find and train dogs: elderly people living alone, families with special needs children, and even some local therapy programs. Sage seemed to know exactly how to make each new dog feel comfortable. One year after finding Sage behind the dumpster, Kaya sat in her garden, watching her dog play with some new rescue puppies they were training. Fern was there too, setting up tables for their weekly community dinner, something that had started with just the 3 of them but now included Rook, several program participants, and their dogs. "Remember when you thought you couldn't keep her?" Fern asked, putting out plates. Kaya nodded, thinking about that scared night when she first wrapped Sage in her jacket. "I never thought finding a puppy would change my whole life." "You didn't just find a puppy," Rook called from where she was grilling vegetables. "You found your purpose." The garden was full of life now, vegetables growing in neat rows, flowers blooming everywhere, and happy dogs running around with their new families. Kaya had even built a special area where program participants could practice training their dogs. That evening, as everyone gathered for dinner, Kaya looked around at what her life had become. Mr. Pike was there with Bear, telling anyone who would listen about how his dog helped him walk to the park every day. The girl from the pet store was there too, now with her own trained companion dog, laughing as she helped serve food. Sage moved from person to person, checking on everyone like she always did. She had grown into her big paws, becoming exactly what Dr. Wren predicted, a gentle giant who loved everyone she met. But she always came back to Kaya, sitting by her side, ready for whatever came next. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the garden was quiet, Kaya and Sage sat on their patio. The stars were out, just like on that rainy night when they first met. But now they weren't alone or scared. They had a family, not a traditional one, but a family of people and pets who had found each other when they needed it most. You know what, Sage? Kaya said, hugging her dog. Sometimes the best things in life come from taking a chance on love. Sage wagged her tail and licked Kaya's face, like she always did when she agreed. Together, they had built something special, a place where second chances were given, where love was shared, and where every stray could find their way home. As they headed inside for bed, Kaya smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new dogs to train, new people to help, and new adventures to share. But that was okay. As long as she had Sage by her side, she was ready for anything. After all, every good story has a beginning, but the best ones never really end. They just keep growing, one paw print at a time.